May 16, 1943, 11:28 p.m., 60 feet above the Möhne Reservoir, Germany. The Lancaster bomber screams across black water at 240 miles per hour, so low that spray kicks up against Wing Commander Guy Gibson's canopy. Below, moonlight gleams off the reservoir like hammered steel. Ahead, the massive Möhne Dam rises, a 130-foot wall of masonry holding back 140 million tons of water. Gibson's gloved hand tightens on the control column. In 45 seconds, 19 crews of 617 Squadron will learn whether Barnes Wallis's bouncing bomb is genius or madness. In the nose, bomb aimer Frederick Spafford lies prone, eye pressed to his sight. The dam's towers loom closer. Anti-aircraft fire erupts in orange tracers. The Germans finally awake to this absurd attack. A shell punches through the night beside the Lancaster's wing. Gibson doesn't flinch. At precisely 60 feet altitude and 232 miles per hour, with the dam towers aligned in Spafford's rangefinder, one word crackles over the intercom.
Bomb gone. The cylindrical weapon, 9,250 pounds of RDX explosive encased in steel, drops away, spinning backward at 500 RPM. It hits the water, bounces once, twice, 3 times, skipping across the reservoir surface like a stone thrown by a giant's hand. The backspin drives it down against the dam wall, where it sinks to exactly 30 feet before detonating. The explosion sends a column of white water 1,000 feet into the air. Gibson banks hard, watching. Nothing. The dam holds. Behind him, Flight Lieutenant John Hoppy Hopgood begins his run. More flak. Hopgood's Lancaster shudders, trailing fire, but he holds course. His bomb releases, skips, strikes the dam parapet, and explodes prematurely in a cascade of flame and spray. Hopgood's bomber cartwheels into the ground beyond the dam. 5 men dead in an instant. Squadron leader Henry Maudsley goes next, then Flight Lieutenant David Maltby. Each bomb strikes the dam wall. Each massive explosion sends water geysering skyward. Still the wall stands. Gibson orbits, counting his remaining aircraft, calculating tonnage against masonry. The Germans had laughed at intelligence reports of bouncing bombs. Artificial thunderstorms, one Wehrmacht engineer had called them in a dismissed report. Physically impossible to breach a properly constructed dam from the air. At 12:49 a.m., Flight Lieutenant Dainted Shannon releases the 5th upkeep mine. The cylinder skips perfectly, contacts the wall, sinks. 10 seconds later, the heart of the Möhne Dam erupts. Not just water this time, the entire structure convulses. A crack appears at the dam's center, spiderwebbing outward. Then, with a roar audible above the Lancaster's engines, a section of the wall collapses. Water, millions upon millions of gallons, bursts through the breach in a wall of white fury 50 feet high. The reservoir empties with geological violence, sending a tsunami roaring down the Ruhr Valley at 20 miles per hour.
In the valley below, air raid sirens begin their futile wail. Factories, power stations, and villages have minutes before the deluge arrives. Gibson wheels his damaged Lancaster westward. The Eder Dam waits 50 miles south, another fortress the Germans deemed invulnerable. In his logbook later, Gibson will write simply, "A tremendous sight." But in this moment, watching the Ruhr Valley flood in moonlight, he knows 617 Squadron has just rewritten the rules of strategic bombing. The impossible has become real. May 17, 1943, 1:15 a.m., the Eder Reservoir, Hesse. Flight Lieutenant David Shannon circles the Eder Dam for the 3rd time, and the rage in his voice crackles over the radio. This is bloody impossible. He's not wrong. Where the Möhne sat in flat farmland with clear approach runs, the Eder hides in a steep valley surrounded by 1,000-foot hills thick with pine forest. To attack, the Lancasters must dive through a gap in the mountains, level out 30 feet above water in pitch darkness, dodge a castle spur jutting into the reservoir, release the bomb, then pull up violently to clear the hills beyond the dam. Squadron leader Henry Maudsley has already died trying. His bomb struck the dam parapet, detonating directly beneath his aircraft. The Lancaster disintegrated in a fireball that lit up the entire valley. Now Shannon, Flight Lieutenant Les Knight, and Pilot Officer Bill Otley orbit, fuel gauges dropping, knowing that every minute of delay means German night fighters scrambling toward them. Shannon makes his fourth run. The Lancaster drops like a stone into the valley, moonlight flashing on the fuselage. Trees blur past the wingtips. His bomb aimer screams, "Too high! Too high!" They're at 80 feet, not 60. Shannon hauls back on the controls, aborting. The bomber claws over the dam wall with feet to spare, engines screaming. Knight volunteers for the next attempt. Australian-born, 22 years old, with 98 operational sorties behind him. His navigator, Flying Officer Harold Hobday, plots the approach. Enter the valley at the castle ruins, descend to treetop height, level at 60 feet exactly 400 yards from the dam. Piece of cake, Knight mutters, but his knuckles are white on the controls. At 1:39 a.m., Knight's Lancaster, callsign AJN, plunges into the valley. The altimeter spins backward. 300 feet, 200, 100. Flight engineer Ray Grayston calls heights continuously. 70, 65, 60. The spotlights beneath the wings converge on the water surface, their only altitude reference in the darkness. The castle spur flashes past the port wing. Anti-aircraft fire erupts from positions the Möhne attack had alerted. Tracer rounds stitch the sky around the bomber. "Steady," bomb aimer Frederick Johnson murmurs. The towers align in his sight. Bomb gone. The upkeep mine drops, spinning. It hits the water perfectly, bounces 3 times, strikes the dam wall dead center, and sinks. Knight hauls back with both hands, the Lancaster's nose lifting just as the valley walls close in. The aircraft clears the ridge with 10 feet of clearance. Behind them, the bomb detonates 30 feet underwater against the Eder's masonry. The explosion is different this time, deeper, more concentrated. The Eder Dam, unlike the Möhne, has no steel reinforcement. It's pure stone, built in 1914 with pre-war engineering tolerances. The shockwave punches through the structure like a fist through paper. At 1:52 a.m., a 230-foot section of the dam wall simply vanishes. The Eder Reservoir, holding 202 million cubic meters of water, empties in a geological instant. The flood wave, higher and faster than the Möhne's, roars down the Eder and Fulda valleys at 25 miles per hour. The town of Apeldoorn, nestled in the valley 3 miles downstream, has no warning system. The wall of water hits at 2:10 a.m. Houses built of stone for 300 years dissolve like sugar cubes. 47 people die in their sleep. Gibson receives Knight's terse radio call. Eder destroyed. 2 dams breached. 8 aircraft lost. 53 men dead. But as the surviving Lancasters turn for home, crossing the Dutch coast at dawn with fuel tanks nearly empty, they leave behind a scene of devastation that will shock the Nazi high command to its core. In the Ruhr Valley, the Möhne flood has traveled 50 miles, drowning power stations, severing canal systems, and destroying the Herdecke generating station that supplied electricity to Dortmund and Essen. The water treatment plant at Frandenberg is gone, along with 12 bridges, 3 factories, and 125 acres of farmland. Over 1,600 people are dead, many of them forced laborers in camps below the dam. The Germans, who dismissed bouncing bombs as fantasy, now face a strategic nightmare their engineers swore was impossible. May 17, 1943, 6:42 a.m. Soest, 15 miles from the Möhne Dam. Oberst Heinrich Himmler, no relation to the Reichsführer SS, stands in 3 feet of muddy water that was, an hour ago, the main street of this 800-year-old town. The water still rushes past with enough force to knock a man down, carrying timber, furniture, bodies. A dead cow floats by, bloated and spinning slowly. Himmler, commander of the Wehrmacht's 17th Corps Engineering Section, stares downstream at what remains of the Westhoven power plant, now a tangle of twisted steel girders and shattered concrete. Unmöglich, he whispers. Impossible. He'd written a report in 1940 dismissing British plans to attack German dams as technically unfeasible fantasy. The mathematics were clear. No conventional bomb could breach a properly constructed gravity dam. The structure would absorb the blast force through its sheer mass. Even the Luftwaffe's heaviest 1,000-kilogram bombs barely scarred the Möhne's surface during testing exercises. But the evidence surrounds him. A 30-mile-long lake of devastation where the Ruhr Valley used to be. At the Herdecke power station, 6 massive turbines lie buried under debris. The pumping stations feeding Dortmund and Essen with drinking water, demolished. The Dortmund-Ems Canal, drained, its locks shattered. The Ruhr railway bridge at Frondenberg swept away, along with a troop train that was crossing at 2:30 a.m. 48 Wehrmacht soldiers drowned before they understood what was happening. Himmler's aide approaches, water sloshing around his boots, holding a dripping map case. Herr Oberst, the Eder reports are confirmed. The entire central section, gone. The Fulda Valley is flooded all the way to Kassel. Himmler snatches the report. His eyes scan the casualty figures. 1,294 confirmed dead at the Möhne, 47 at the Eder. But those numbers will climb. Hundreds are missing. Entire villages submerged or swept away. The economic damage estimates make him close his eyes.
A deep, steady narration with a calm but commanding tone. Slightly gravelly, mature voice that carries the weight of wartime history. Clear, deliberate pacing, never rushed, allowing tension to build naturally. Subtle emotional restraint, controlled intensity during dramatic moments, quieter and reflective during tragic ones. Cinematic, documentary-style delivery with precise emphasis on key names, dates, and actions. A voice that sounds authoritative, historical, and inevitable. 1,200 factories affected, 11 hydroelectric plants destroyed or damaged, 25 road bridges lost, 21 railway bridges gone. By noon, Albert Speer himself arrives by car from Berlin. Hitler's Minister of Armaments stands at the breach in the Möhne Dam, now a 250-foot wide gap in the wall, and watches 70,000 cubic meters of water still pouring through every minute. Engineers estimate the reservoir will take 6 months to drain completely. Repairs? Years. If the Allies return and strike during reconstruction, the entire Ruhr's water supply will collapse. How, Speer asks Himmler. How did they do this? Himmler has fragments of intelligence, reports of cylindrical bombs, unusual low-level attacks, something about backspin. But the full picture won't emerge for weeks. British intelligence has already hidden the upkeep mine's remnants.
Barnes Wallis's breakthrough, a mine that skipped over torpedo nets, avoided underwater defenses, and delivered shaped charges directly against the dam wall at the optimal depth, will remain classified until 1963. What Speer knows is this: the British have demonstrated they can strike targets Germany considered invulnerable. Every major dam in the Reich is now at risk. The psychological impact ripples through OKW headquarters like the flood waves themselves. If the British can breach the Möhne and Eder, what else can they reach? The V-weapon facilities at Peenemünde, the ball-bearing plants at Schweinfurt, the U-boat pens at Lorient.
Meanwhile, in England, 8 Lancasters are still struggling home. Gibson's aircraft crosses the English coast at 7:15 a.m., running on fumes, hydraulics damaged, one engine misfiring. Of the 19 aircraft that departed, 11 will return.
53 men dead. But 6117 Squadron has just proven that precision bombing, properly executed, can achieve what 1,000-plane raids cannot. The laughing has stopped. The Germans are counting their dead and rebuilding walls they swore could never fall.
May 17th, 1943, 9:30 a.m. RAF Scampton, Lincolnshire. Wing Commander Guy Gibson climbs out of Lancaster ED 932, and his legs nearly give way. He's been airborne for 8 hours and 40 minutes, the last 2 on adrenaline and terror alone. Ground crew rush forward. They've been counting aircraft since dawn, watching the sky, praying. 11 returned. 8 did not. The math is brutal. 41% casualties. For any other squadron, this would be catastrophic. For 617, it's the price of rewriting military history. Group Captain Charles Whitworth greets Gibson on the tarmac, his face unreadable. Well, Gibson's voice is hoarse from hours of radio traffic and tobacco smoke. Möhne breached, Eder destroyed, Sorpa damaged but holding. Whitworth's expression cracks into something between a smile and disbelief. "You've done it, Guy! My God, you've actually done it!" In the debriefing room, the surviving crews sit in stunned silence, drinking tea spiked with rum.
Flight Lieutenant Les Knight's hands shake as he lights a cigarette, his 6th since landing. Shannon stares at the wall, seeing Maudsley's Lancaster explode over and over. They've been trained to bomb from 20,000 feet, where flak is distant and death is abstract. But at 60 feet, they watch their friends die in real time, close enough to see the flames consume the fuselage. Barnes Wallis arrives at noon, driven from Weybridge at reckless speed. The 56-year-old engineer who designed the bombs has barely slept in 3 days. When Gibson confirms both primary targets destroyed, Wallis's face crumples. He sits heavily in a chair, hands in hands, and weeps. Not from joy, from the weight of 53 deaths. His breakthrough killed as many British boys as Germans. Gibson grips his shoulder. They knew the risks. They volunteered. And they won. By afternoon, reconnaissance mosquitoes return with photographs that silence every skeptic in Bomber Command. The Möhne, a deep, steady gap, vomiting water into the void. The Eder, its central section simply gone, as if a god had taken a bite from the wall. The Ruhr Valley, transformed into an inland sea stretching to the horizon. Air Chief Marshal Arthur Bomber Harris, who fought for resources to fund Wallis's crazy bouncing bomb, allows himself a rare smile. "Gentlemen," he tells his staff, "we've just proven that precision beats saturation. 1 good raid is worth 50 bad ones." The propaganda value arrives within hours. By evening, BBC broadcasts trumpet RAF smashes Nazi dams across Europe. Churchill himself drafts the official statement, ensuring the story emphasizes British ingenuity and daring. The timing is perfect. Coming weeks after Axis victories in North Africa and Russia, Britain desperately needs a morale boost. The Dambusters, as newspapers immediately christened them, become instant heroes. But in Germany, the assessment is grimmer. Speer's engineers deliver their full damage report to Hitler on May 19th. The Führer reads in silence. 6,000 miners idle due to flooded pits. 11 synthetic oil plants operating at reduced capacity. Water supplies for 4.5 million people disrupted. Agricultural losses exceeding 10,000 hectares. Production at Krupp's Essen Works down 40. A single raid that forces Germany to divert massive resources to defend hundreds of targets. On May 22nd,
King George VI visits Scampton to personally congratulate 617 Squadron. Gibson receives the Victoria Cross. 33 other decorations are awarded. The king asks Gibson how it felt to watch the dams break. Gibson, exhausted and haunted by the faces of dead friends, answers honestly, "Like hell opening, Your Majesty, but necessary hell." The celebration masks a darker truth emerging in intelligence reports. Of the 1,600 dead in the floods, nearly 600 were Soviet and Polish forced laborers imprisoned in camps below the dams. Women and children locked in barracks, drowned in darkness. Britain will not publicize this for decades. War demands moral compromises, measured in corpses.
May 28, 1943. Vickers Armstrong Works, Weybridge, Surrey. Barnes Wallis sits alone in his office at 2 a.m., surrounded by equations and photographs he cannot stop studying. On his desk, reconnaissance images of the Möhne breach, taken at 6-hour intervals, the gap widening as water erodes the damaged structure. Engineering perfection destroyed by engineering perfection. In his drawer, letters from the families of the 53 dead airmen. He's answered each one personally, though no words adequately justify why their sons had to fly 60 feet above enemy territory in the moonlight. The Upkeep mine, his bouncing bomb, has become an overnight sensation, but Wallis knows the terrible specifics. Each mine cost 7,400 pounds to manufacture. Each required 6,000 man-hours to build. The cylindrical casing alone demanded metallurgical precision beyond anything previously attempted. The Vickers team worked 16-hour shifts for 3 months to produce just 19 operational weapons.
And now, the Air Ministry wants more. Dozens more, for targets across Europe. But Wallis has already moved beyond Operation Chastise. On his drafting table, designs for Tallboy, a 12,000-pound earthquake bomb designed to penetrate 100 feet underground before detonating. His calculations suggest it could collapse submarine pens, destroy viaducts, crater V-weapon launch sites. The Admiralty thinks he's mad again. They thought the same about bouncing bombs until May 17th. At RAF Scampton, 617 Squadron faces a different problem. What comes next? Guy Gibson, now a national hero at 24, struggles with sudden celebrity. Newspapers call him the Dam Buster Commander. School children write fan letters. The Prime Minister wants him for recruiting tours. But Gibson knows the mathematics of survival. 41% losses are unsustainable. Do that twice more, and the squadron ceases to exist.
He pushes for conventional bombing operations while replacements arrive, men who must be trained to Gibson's exacting standards of low-level precision flying. Flight Lieutenant Les Knight, the Australian who broke the Eder, never speaks about that night. His crew notices he doesn't sleep well. In September, he'll fly his 99th operation, an attack on the Dortmund-Ems Canal. Shot down returning to England, he'll order his crew to bail out over the Channel, while he stays at the controls of the crippled Lancaster, giving them time to escape. His body will wash ashore 3 weeks later. He'll be 22. In Germany, the recovery operation continues with brutal efficiency. Albert Speer has mobilized 20,000 workers to drain the Möhne Valley and repair the dam. The organization Taut, using forced labor from concentration camps, begins pouring concrete 24 hours a day. Engineers estimate repairs will take until September 1943. They're wrong. It will take until October 1944. The Eder won't be fully operational again until 1947. The human cost compounds daily. As floodwaters recede, bodies emerge from the mud, trapped in cellars, wrapped around tree trunks, buried in debris fields that stretch for miles. German civil defense records document 1,294 deaths at the Möhne, but local historians will later suggest the true number exceeds 1,600. The forced labor casualties, officially 476 Soviet prisoners and 46 Polish workers, are buried in unmarked mass graves. The Nazi regime doesn't want headlines about dead subhumans overshadowing military setbacks. British intelligence, meanwhile, races to understand why the Sorp Dam survived. Flight Officer Joe McCarthy's crew attacked it 5 times, but the earthen dam, unlike the masonry Möhne and Eder, absorbed the blast force through its flexible structure. The upkeep mine, designed for hard targets, proved ineffective against dirt and rock. Wallis returns to his calculations, designing new weapons for new problems.
War is an iterative process of violence and counter-violence. By June 1943, the strategic assessment crystallizes. Operation Chastise achieved tactical success, but strategic limitations. The Ruhr's industrial production, after an initial 25% drop, recovers within 2 months. Speer's decentralized manufacturing strategy, spreading production across hundreds of small workshops, proves resilient against precision strikes. The dams, once repaired, will be so heavily defended that another bouncing bomb raid becomes impossible. The window of vulnerability has closed. Yet the psychological impact endures. German High Command now factors dam vulnerability into every defensive calculation. Thousands of soldiers guard infrastructure far from the front lines. Resources pour into defensive measures against attacks that may never come. The British have weaponized uncertainty itself. Every German dam, every reservoir, every hydroelectric plant becomes a potential target demanding protection.
On June 15th, Gibson flies his final operation with 617 Squadron before being grounded for a propaganda tour. He'll survive until September 1944, when his Mosquito crashes in Holland on his 174th operation. His body won't be found until 1947. He'll be 26 years old, forever young. Forever the boy who broke Germany's dams on a moonlit night in
June 12, 1943. Berchtesgaden, Bavaria. Adolf Hitler stands before a wall-sized map of Germany, red pins marking every major dam and reservoir in the Reich. 63 pins. 63 potential catastrophes. His architect-turned-armaments minister, Albert Speer, has just presented the final damage assessment from Operation Chastise, and the numbers infuriate the Führer more than the physical destruction itself. "They humiliated us," Hitler says, voice tight. Not shouting, that comes later, but the cold fury his inner circle fears most. 1 squadron, 19 aircraft, and they crippled the Ruhr for 2 months. He jabs a finger at the Möhne's location. Our engineers said it was impossible. Our intelligence said the British had no such weapon. Our flak batteries never even saw them coming. Reichsmarschall Hermann Göring, commander of the Luftwaffe, sweats through his powder blue uniform.
His promise that no enemy plane will fly over the Reich sounds more absurd with each passing month. He blusters about radar improvements and night fighter deployments, but Hitler cuts him off with a gesture. The damage is done. The question now is prevention. Speer's solution is characteristically thorough. Deploy 10,000 troops to dam defense installations, install 150 additional flak batteries, construct steel torpedo nuts across every strategic reservoir, position smoke generators to obscure targets during moonlit nights. Cost, 45 million Reichsmarks. Timeline, 4 months. The resources will come from Atlantic wall construction, from U-boat production, from tank manufacturing, everywhere except the Eastern Front, which cannot spare a single bullet. But there's a deeper problem neither man mentions in Hitler's presence. The British have demonstrated a capability Germany cannot match: precision night bombing at extremely low altitude.
The Luftwaffe tried similar dam attacks against Soviet targets in 1942. All failed catastrophically. German bombers lack the training, equipment, and institutional culture for such operations. Britain's Bomber Command has been refining night bombing techniques since 1939. Germany started the war assuming daylight supremacy would suffice. Now they're paying for that assumption in flooded valleys and diverted resources. At Bletchley Park, British codebreakers intercept and decrypt German signals traffic discussing Operation Chastise's aftermath. The intelligence windfall is extraordinary. Detailed damage reports, defensive deployments, resource allocations, psychological assessments. One decrypted message from OKW to all regional commanders reads, "Dam security is now priority classification Alpha 1. Treat all reservoirs as potential high-value targets subject to specialist attack." The British have created paranoia as a weapon.
Harris at Bomber Command studies these intercepts with satisfaction. Every German soldier guarding a dam is a soldier not fighting in Italy or Russia. Every flak battery protecting a reservoir is one not defending Berlin or Hamburg. The strategic bombing campaign's goal isn't just destruction, it's forcing Germany to defend everything, spreading resources until something breaks. Yet, within 617 Squadron, a darker mood settles. New crews arrive throughout June and July, but they're not Gibson's hand-picked specialists. They're standard Bomber Command crews. Good men, but not the obsessive perfectionists required for precision low-level work. The squadron transitions to conventional targets: V-weapon sites, U-boat pens, railway viaducts. The missions are dangerous, but not suicidal. The 41% loss rate of Operation Chastise will never be repeated, because it cannot be. No squadron could sustain that attrition. Barnes Wallis, meanwhile, fights a new battle with the Air Ministry.
His Tallboy deep penetration bomb is ready for testing, but production requires specialized facilities and rare materials. The bureaucracy moves slowly, committees debate endlessly. Wallis, in a rare moment of anger, tells one Air Vice Marshal, "We proved precision weapons work. Now let me build better ones before the bloody Germans do." The Tallboy won't become operational until June 1944, just in time to destroy V-weapon facilities and sink the battleship Tirpitz. In the Ruhr Valley, life slowly returns to an altered landscape. The floodwaters have receded, leaving 10,000 hectares of silt-choked farmland. Entire villages are gone, just foundation stones and memories. The town of Neheim lost 800 buildings. Frandenburg lost its medieval town center. The Herdeck Pommer Station, once supplying 45,000 kilowatts, is a concrete skeleton that won't generate electricity again until 1945. German engineers rebuilding the Möhne Dam make it stronger than before.
Thicker walls, deeper foundations, reinforced with steel and newer concrete formulations. They also install early warning systems, anti-aircraft positions built into the structure itself, and underwater nets designed to catch any bouncing bomb. The work proceeds under Allied reconnaissance. Mosquito aircraft photograph the repairs weekly. But Bomber Command never returns. The defenses are too strong now, and the upkeep mine's secret is compromised. The window closed after one perfect night. By autumn 1943, Operation Chastise has become history's template for special operations. Intensive training, technological innovation, precise execution, and acceptance of terrible casualties for strategic gain. The mission will be studied at military academies for decades. But for the men who flew it, the memory is simpler and harder.
Friends who didn't come home, water exploding in moonlight, and the knowledge that they did the impossible once, which means they'll be asked to do impossible things again. May 17th, 1963, 20 years later. The Möhne Dam stands pristine under a spring sun, its reconstructed wall showing no trace of the night it broke. Tour buses idle in the car park as German schoolchildren scramble along the observation platform, their teacher explaining how British bombers once attacked this very structure. The story has become sanitized with time, adventure tale more than tragedy. The teacher mentions 1,600 deaths, but the number is abstract. The children photograph the reservoir, calm and blue, holding back 140 million tons of water that know nothing of history. In Britain, Paul Brickhill's book, The Dambusters, has become an international bestseller. The 1955 film adaptation, starring Richard Todd as Guy Gibson, plays on television every year. The bouncing bomb is now iconic, shown skipping across miniature reservoirs in Pinewood Studios, set to Eric Coates' triumphant march. Audiences cheer when the dams break. They don't see the drowned Polish women in the forced labor camps. They don't count the 53 British dead. Cinema transforms horror into heroism, blood into ticker tape. Barnes Wallis, now 76, lives quietly in Surrey. He never speaks publicly about Operation Chastise. His Tallboy and Grand Slam earthquake bombs, used to devastating effect from 1944 onward, killed more Germans and destroyed more infrastructure than the dam raids ever did. But it's the bouncing bomb people remember, the impossible weapon that worked once, perfectly, and could never be used again. In his private papers, Wallis writes, "I gave them a way to destroy, and they made me a hero for it. I would trade every medal to bring back one of those 53 boys." Of the 133 aircrew who flew Operation Chastise, 53 died that night. Of the 80 survivors, 32 died on subsequent operations before war's end. By 1963, only 39 remain alive. They gather occasionally at RAF reunions, graying men in their 40s who flew as boys. They drink to absent friends. Les Knight killed at 22. Hoppy Hopgood, dead at 26. Henry Maudsley, 21 when his Lancaster exploded over the Eder. The survivors don't talk about the dams breaking. They talk about pre-flight tea, Gibson's impossible standards, the terror of training runs over Derwent Reservoir, the small human moments before everything went mad. Guy Gibson's Victoria Cross sits in a museum case at RAF Cranwell. He never lived to see 27. Shot down on a marking run over Holland, his body lay missing for 3 years before a farmer found the wreckage. The Germans gave him a military funeral, respect for an enemy who'd done the impossible. His autobiography, Enemy Coast Ahead, published posthumously, became required reading for RAF pilots. The final entry, written hours before his death. "The thought that I might not return doesn't worry me. What worries me is leaving unfinished business." In Germany, the Möhne and Eder dams function as they were designed, providing water, generating electricity, controlling floods. The repairs cost 40 million Reichsmarks and took 17 months. The scars are invisible now, buried under new concrete and time. Local museums display fragments of the upkeep mines, twisted metal recovered from the lakebed, alongside photographs of the destruction. German historians debate the raid's effectiveness. Was 2 months of disruption worth 1,600 civilian deaths? The question has no comfortable answer. The strategic assessment remains complex. Operation Chastise didn't shorten the war. The Ruhr's industrial production recovered. Germany adapted, decentralized, and continued fighting for 2 more years. But the raid achieved something subtler. It proved that no target was truly invulnerable, that innovation and courage could breach any defense, that the impossible was simply the difficult attempted by the desperate. Hitler's engineers laughed at bouncing bombs, until the night the laughter drowned in 330 million tons of water. The Upkeep mine itself remained classified until 1963, when the British government finally declassified Barnes Wallis's designs. By then, precision-guided munitions and nuclear weapons had made the bouncing bomb obsolete, a brilliant solution to a problem that existed for exactly one night in May 1943. The weapon's greatest achievement wasn't the dams it broke, but the mindset it created, that engineering and bravery could accomplish what conventional wisdom deemed impossible. On the 20th anniversary, a memorial plaque is dedicated at RAF Scampton. It lists 53 names: pilots, navigators, bomb aimers, wireless operators, flight engineers, gunners. Average age, 22. The inscription reads simply, "They gave their lives that others might live in freedom." The sentiment is true, but incomplete. They gave their lives attempting something no one had done before, flying lower and slower than sanity allowed, trusting mathematics and physics and each other in the darkness over enemy territory. The last surviving member of 617 Squadron's dam raid crews will die in 2013 at age 90. With him goes the final first-hand memory of what it felt like to watch Germany's invincible dams crumble. Future generations will study the operation in textbooks, watch dramatizations, build model Lancasters, but they'll never know the specific terror of flying 60 feet above the Möhne Reservoir while tracer fire stitches the sky. Never feel the control column bucking as 9,250 pounds of spinning steel drops away. Never see their friend's aircraft explode in balls of orange flame reflected in black water. History compresses tragedy into triumph, erases doubt with certainty, transforms chaos into narrative. The truth is messier.
Operation Chastise was brilliant and brutal, necessary and terrible, a success purchased with blood that can never be repaid. The dams broke, the floods came, the impossible became real for one perfect, horrifying night. And the world never forgot the moment Germany's laughter drowned in the waters of its own shattered certainty.